What's up with the heat? Huh? I don't want to punish these people. They didn't do anything wrong. Well, we've had a couple good work days, and pleased with the way the players are trying to respond and get through the week in terms of the preparation. When you want something, that certainly creates the drive that you need to achieve it. And even though we seem to be rapidly becoming a fast food nation of people who wants immediate self-gratification, instant coffee, instant tea, instant everything right now, that's certainly not the way of the world when it comes to college football. You can't win if you don't finish the race, and it takes a lot of perseverance on everybody's part to continue to work, focus on what they need to do to improve and get better. I always had a special respect for Herschel Walker, but I read something just today that, I thought this guy was one of the most talented guys from a size and speed standpoint, and could run fast, big and strong, and probably about as good a back as anybody ever had or played. And, Coach Dooley won the national championship when he played. He was a great pro player, and he said, my God-given talent is that I can stick with things longer than anybody else. Well, that's kind of interesting to me. And certainly I hope is something that, our players have the who they are is all about that, and what they want is important to them, and they're going to continue to persevere to, try to get it. We had a couple guys switch numbers. I know that's really something that interests you all, but it's really a special teams issue. You can't have two guys with the same number on special teams, and we had a couple guys that we wanted to work in on special teams and maybe have a role, and it was a number issue, and both guys were happy to do what was best for the team, and Chris Rogers is number 1 and Jarrell Harris is number 10. From an injury standpoint, Javi has taken all the reps and done all the work this week. Dre Kirkpatrick's done all the work. Chapman has worked. Bowman has worked. A couple other guys nicked up a little bit, but have been able to work. Chris Jordan, Corey Reamer, just bumps and bruises, but they're working their way through it. We're excited about the opportunity that we have on Saturday, and we have a tremendous amount of respect for Tennessee's toughness, their ability to run the ball, and the way they play defense. And so this is going to be a real challenge for us, and we're looking forward to it.
Coach, the last couple of days for us have been kind of consumed with things that really don't have a lot to do with the game, but I was going to ask you, were you in at all on the decision to not allow Tennessee wear the orange jerseys here on Saturday?
That was Coach Moore's call. I really, I tell you, guys, I just have to be real honest with you. I have never, anywhere I've ever been, had anything to do with uniforms. I think that the tradition, from my perspective, the tradition of the school, the tradition of the expectation of all the people who see Alabama come out in whatever they come out in, or LSU come out in whatever they come out in, and everybody always comes to me, you want to change the helmet, you want to change the jersey, you want to change the uniform, you want to change this, you want to change that. It's not my decision. Okay, I don't want anything to do with all that. All right, because to me it's bigger than me and it's bigger than the coach. So when somebody else asks to do something like that here, I really don't have any feel for it, nor do I want to even be involved in it. And I told, Coach Moore asked me about it, and I told him, I said, look, now it's your call. I don't really, it doesn't bother me. As long as we wear our traditional thing, I'm not worried about the other team and what they wear. So, and I know some guys go places and they have gold jerseys and the team's always worn white or whatever, and they change this and that and all that. I'm not into that. Maybe I ought to be, but I'm not. Terry picks out my clothes. I can't go shopping. I don't like to shop. I don't buy anything for myself. Maybe that's part of it.
And also this week, Lane Kiffin has said that he would like to pattern his program after what you've done here, the style of football that Alabama plays. And just curious, your thoughts on where he has that program in a short period of time in his first year.
Well, I really appreciate the comment, but I think that they have playing with a tremendous amount of toughness, and they've shown a lot of resolve as a team to go to Florida and play a very competitive game and be very physical in that game, and they're establishing that with their offense and the way they play defense, and I think those characteristics are probably the most important things in sort of building a program. You know, you build from the foundation of the intangibles that you need to create the work ethic and the toughness and all those kinds of things. And, you know, I see that happening with their team. I mean, I see it in their team.
Coach, I know you've visited this week for the sake of the media in this room, and I apologize for asking you about it again. Would you just comment on the tape gate situation as it's been dubbed?
Well, it's a 5-yard penalty. I mean, we've been having this discussion about somebody lining up offsides. I mean, first of all, I didn't know anything about it. All right, but since it happened, we did research, and over half the guys in the league this year use something to show the kicker where they're going to spot the ball. Could be a piece of grass, could be a piece of mud, could be anything. And we researched last year, and South Carolina's very good kicker used it. So I wasn't aware of it. I'm not upset with anybody. I'm glad that somebody made us aware of it, because I sure would not want to get a 5-yard penalty for such a critical offense. So, and I don't want to get caught up in anything like Watergate, because it really wasn't about the crime, it was about the cover-up. So we're not trying to cover this up, and I certainly don't want to get in trouble with anybody doing that, because this is really an important thing, really an important thing. But I'm glad that somebody thought it was important enough to bring it to our attention so we can get it corrected.
Coach Saban, you had mentioned Monday about both still needing to have explosive plays in the passing game and yet perhaps simplifying in some ways what Greg has to do at the quarterback position. And I was just curious how his week of practice had gone and how the week in the passing
Greg
game
has
had gone.
done a good job this week. You know, I think that it's really important that, you know, one of the things that you all do extremely well is create expectations for people because of their performance. You know, you say they're going to win the Heisman Trophy and you do things like that, or they're the leading contender and all that. And then when they have a bad game, they're fair game to really get their legs chopped out from under them. And, you know, but if you didn't build them up, then the chopping block would not be nearly as effective, you know, in terms of killing them. So, and we understand that's the way of the world. And I think some people handle that a little better than others. And I think sometimes that you can get caught up a little bit in focusing more on how you're playing than what you're doing. How you're doing rather than what you're doing. Does that make sense? And we don't want our players to focus on how they're doing. We want them to focus on what they're doing on this play at this time and all the things fundamentally that they have to do to be successful on that play. You know, it's a little bit that fast food nation that I talked about, immediate self-gratification. You're all interested in results, but you have to be able to focus on the process of what it takes to get the results. It's no different than shooting a foul shot. You know, whether the foul shot means you're going to win the game by making it or you're ahead by 30 and it means nothing. You should be able to shoot the shot the same to give yourself the best opportunity to be successful. Right? And when you talk to guys like Michael Jordan and they ask him, you know, well, what did you do to elevate your game at the end of the games? He said, nothing. Everybody else just choked. I just played the same. I could still shoot the same shot, drive the same way. They all got too close or too far or whatever because they were overplaying the situation, and I just did what I do, played my game. And I think that's sort of what we want Greg to do, and that's what we need him to do. I think he understands that. And I think he maybe got to the point where he was expecting so much from himself that he got a little disappointed, and that's not necessary. You know, we want him to focus on what he needs to do to be successful, and we want to do everything we can do to help him be successful.
Coach, I wanted to ask you about Burton Burns. Can you comment on his ability to develop players, not only freshmen like he's done with Trent and with Ingram last year, but also long-term with veterans like Grant and Upchurch?
You know, Burton's a great coach, does a great job. I think the players respond well to him. He's very enthusiastic and upbeat. He's a good teacher. He's got a good feel for it. I think he played the position. And that is an instinctive position. You know, that's kind of one of those positions where, you know, guys have instincts for it. And when you have a coach that has that, you know, they can kind of see it like the guy sees it, you know, and I think that is very, very helpful. I think that we've been fortunate that we have some talented players at that position, and Burton has done an extremely good job of helping develop those players to be very productive and consistent in their performance.
Coach, what have you seen from Jonathan Crompton in the last game? Big improvement over the first couple. Anything different from him?
Well, I think you know, they sort of did a lot of things different in the Georgia game. I'm sure with the bye week they'll do some things different in our game, but they moved the pocket a lot with a lot of boots and sprint outs and things like that. And he did a nice job of executing those things, but it really complemented their running game, and those plays were the misdirection plays, so it really kind of got the defense moving in one direction, and they made a lot of plays on Georgia, you know, with play-action passes. And I think obviously that works best when you run the ball effectively, which they have been doing all year long. And he did a great job of executing it in that game. And I think that they also made a couple big plays, but they were on play-action passes as well.
You talked the other day about needing to eliminate penalties, that you had 10 in the South Carolina game. Which ones are the most correctable? Which ones concern you the most?
Well, undisciplined penalties, to me, are the most correctable. You know, guys jumping off sides. I think decision-making and judgment penalties are the kind you have in the kicking game, even though several of the ones that got called, you know, were, I don't know, we turn our things in every week, but I'm never going to comment on what gets said and what doesn't said about it, because to me the reason that we do it is to help develop our officials and, you know, help Rogers Redding do a good job of trying to develop and teach and all that. It's not a defense, you know, you missed this and you didn't call that, or you made a mistake on this. It's really for learning and teaching and growing, and that's why we do it. But I think 5 penalties in the kicking game are way, way too many. You know, we had a couple undisciplined type penalties, one offsides on defense. You know, Peak pushed off on a guy when he really wasn't involved in the play, on a pass play. But I think all undisciplined type penalties and judgment type penalties come from discipline within each guy in terms of the judgments they make in the situations they're in, and I think those are the ones that are most easily eliminated.